Hey everyone, welcome to a Friday edition of the Roto Grinders Daily Fantasy Fix presented by FanDuel.com. I'm Stevie TPFL. I'm filling in for Dan Bach one more time. He'll be back from vacation on Monday, and you get to hear his great voice. I guess you'd call it a great voice, but it is what it is. Dan is good at what he does, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to talk about with everything that's happened this week. I'll leave all the politics and all that good stuff up to him, and I'm here to talk about this pretty good Friday slate here in the NBA. And seeing that I'm a tournament player, I like to get a different perspective. And I had Notorious on Monday, and he kind of gave you guys a good route for cash. And I talked some tournaments. And Jeff was with me on Wednesday. And, yeah, there was a lot of tournament talk. But today, with it being a good slate here for Good Friday, I'm joined by my main tournament. I'm just kidding. He's a cash game player as well. Mike, how you doing? Hoop!
Yeah, you're not going to trick anyone. And at this point, it's pretty obvious. But, we need to, make sure we keep you contrarian guys in line a little bit. So it's always a good idea to mix in some of this contrarian talk with some cash talk, a little chalk action.
That's what it's all about, man. It's all about bouncing ideas off of each other and kind of giving a good starting point here for our listeners. We're recording this actually on Thursday night. It's like 8:30 Thursday night. So with it being Good Friday tomorrow, a lot of stuff going on with our kids. So we're recording the night before, and I'm really going to have this up, probably Thursday night, Friday morning for you guys going into work if you're working tomorrow. So you guys enjoy that. But Hoop, let's talk some basketball, man. I can't wait till we can talk some baseball here in about 2 weeks, but let's talk some basketball. We got an awesome 9-game slate here. It's getting down to the wire. There's a lot of stuff going with playoffs, and this is not a great time for NBA cash games, but it's a good time for tournaments.
Yeah. It's definitely coming down to the end. And, I've talked about it a few times here on the Grinders live shows, if you guys are able to catch those. Playing NBA DFS at this point in the season, there's a lot more factors worked into the decision making. You can't only, follow your normal routine. You have to take other things into consideration. And, the one thing I always talk about is standings and where teams are in the standings. Like, I have no clue throughout the regular season, like, where teams are. This season, obviously, everyone knew the Warriors. Ridiculous, winning a ton of games. That's the obvious one. After that, like, as of 2 weeks ago, like, I had no clue, like, where any teams are. But now this is the point in the season where you need to start thinking about that, because you have to, take into consideration whether or not a team has anything to play for. Are they fighting for a playoff spot? Are they fighting for playoff positioning? Or do they really have absolutely nothing to play for whatsoever, which obviously increases the likelihood of a player being rested, a player playing limited minutes. So just a lot more things go into playing NBA DFS at this point. Like you said, I think there's obviously a pretty good edge in the tournaments and the cash games. It's gotten to the point in the season where, a lot of people are kind of thinking the same thing, and a lot of sharp, smart people left in the game. So, regardless, it's a good slate, and we got about 1 more week before baseball starts, a little over a week. So, let's see what we can do on this Friday night. It's a pretty nice slate, actually, when you look at it.
Speaking of baseball, before we get into this real quick, did you see the tweet that I tweeted out today of the Mets players with DeGrom hair?
I did see that.
That was my favorite thing I've ever seen in my life.
That was great. And then did you see the Cespedes thing in the ball that was under the fence, kind of?
Oh,
you didn't see it. It was great.
So,
this is an awesome story. So a ball must have been hit over his head. It looked like he was playing somewhere in the outfield. And the fence kind of had it was probably like a 3-inch, not gap, but like where the padding stopped and then went to the wall. So the ball went like kind of right under there. And Cespedes put his hands up like it was stuck under there. So which would be a ground rule double. Well, the umpire goes all the way out there and just takes the ball and just gently taps it, and it rolls out from like underneath. It was still there, and the umpire's like, "What are you doing?" Like, no, so they gave him an inside the park home run. I thought that was pretty funny.
I'm looking at the pictures now. He has for people that can't see it, he just has his hands up and the umpire's giving him a safe thing. Yeah. Oh, yes. Baseball's here. I'm so excited. All right, let's talk some basketball. Minnesota at Washington is the first game we're going to talk about here. 218 over under. Washington's favored by 7. That's kind of a starting line for you guys, because you guys can kind of see what's going to happen here throughout the day, but that's what we have right now. Let's talk about Minnesota. first and foremost here, you have to look at Ricky Rubio, I think. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so this should be a pretty DFS friendly game. Two teams that like to push the pace. We have the Wizards, who are actually fighting for a playoff spot, and the Timberwolves, who are not fighting for a playoff spot, but we've seen them really slim down their rotation. They're giving their guys a lot of minutes. Rubio, LaVine, Wiggins, and Towns, I think, all are in play tonight for that reason. They're giving these young guys a chance. They're basically, seeing what they're made of, trying to get some continuity within these guys. So I like, all those guys. Like you said, Rubio he's got a lot of options now. He's got a lot of people he can dump the ball off to for assists. LaVine, great shooter. Wiggins, really good going to the basket, pull-up shooter as well. And then obviously Karl-Anthony Towns, who, looks to be like he might eventually be one of the best big man in the league. So I think all those guys, viable options. I'm with you on Rubio. I think he's a great play. The price is very nice as well on FanDuel at 7.1K. In cash games, we're looking for about 35 fantasy points, and he has upper 40s, 50 fantasy point upside. So that's makes him GPP playable as well.
Yeah, just to talk about Minnesota here, like you're saying, they really have slimmed down this rotation, so it makes a lot of interesting plays. Towns is a guy that I've been playing a lot in tournaments. I love his upside. Rubio's been the other guy that I've been playing in tournaments. I don't mind Georgie Deng. Looking at his price tag, it's still 6,600 on FanDuel. He's power forward. 30 fantasy points in 6 of his last 7 games, so you really have to look at him as well. Zach LaVine is the one guy that I'm worried about. He played 44 minutes in that game against Sacramento, and this is the thing we worry about with him. He scored 23 actual points, but he doesn't do a lot of other stuff, so that really limits his upside. I put him more on your side of things than on my side of things.
Yeah, certainly.
But I just don't see the upside with LaVine anymore.
Yeah, definitely. He's a guy that has the chance to go out and score more actual points and then fantasy points. He's a guy that could score a lot, not do much in terms of peripherals, and turn the ball over a few times. And you look at it, maybe 24 actual points and like 22 fantasy points. It's definitely possible with this guy, but lucky for us, if you're looking for a shooting guard in this game, I think we can take a look at the guy on the other side of the ball in cash games and tournaments, Bradley Beal. 5.3K. This is a great matchup. The minutes are starting to tick up for him. Let's see, this playing at least 31 minutes in 3 straight games, coming off a complete dud last, so that would have been on Wednesday night. 7 points, 3 assists. So I think that makes him playable in tournaments. And I love this price in cash, so I think he's a really solid play today.
Yeah, Minnesota bottom 10 and as far as point or against shooting guards all season. They're even in the last 3 weeks still in that same kind of range. I think they're allowing the 9th most or something like that, so they're in the bottom 10 there. 5,300. He instantly stands out to me. And you click his game log and you see that he's getting the 30+ minutes. That's exactly what we want to see with Beal. And one thing to kind of monitor here is Alan Anderson. He was ruled out of Wednesday's game. It's so early. We don't know if he's going to play or not in this game. But if he's out, that even bumps Beal even more. It's going to mean that he's going to be even safer option. I like Bradley Beal a lot. Looking at the kind of the playoff picture here for Washington, like you mentioned when we started talking about this game, Washington's kind of in this little hunt. There's 4 teams separated by like 2.5 games. And one of those teams is Chicago, and it's the 3rd quarter, and they're losing by 11 points right now to New York. So, Washington's definitely in a spot where they need to win every game. And you would have to think that John Wall, in games where you want to win and you have to win in their instances, that John Wall just has, unlimited upside in these type of games.
Yeah, I love John Wall when he's playing a slate where other superstars are playing. I love him when Steph Curry, Harden, Westbrook, Durant, those guys are playing. Tonight we have Harden playing and Curry, because he goes low on. People see, all right, this slate, for example, 9.7K for John Wall or 10.6K for Stephen Curry. The people just go to Stephen Curry, and that leaves Wall low owned, which makes him a great tournament play. I think he is a great tournament play tonight. play him in cash as well. This is just a really good game all around for DFS purposes. We have a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, and then we have another team who is basically letting their young guys just do their thing and play a lot of minutes. So, I mean, there's a lot to go around. Another guy that stands out to me, Markieff Morris. I mean, a nice price here, 5.1K. The minutes appear to be kind of locking in the upper 20s, and the last 3 games got 27.3, 29.4, and 30.3 fantasy points. So I mean, he's a guy that we can consider at 5.1K.
Yeah, I like Morris in tournaments with the minutes being down from what he was seeing in that stretch with Phoenix at 5,100. He's definitely a tournament option for me. Gortat, not a tournament option for me. I think this is a tougher matchup. I don't know if I would even play him in a cash game format on a 9-game slate, but 6,300 is not terrible.
Yeah,
but it's a tough matchup. And then one other guy, Otto Porter, more of a tournament play than a cash game play because he's just so inconsistent with fantasy scoring. One night he'll go out and get a double-double, and the next night he'll get 2 rebounds, 3 rebounds. So
yeah, and the thing that the minutes are there, so that's why I wouldn't completely write him off even for cash games, because you look over 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes in 9 straight games. That's very encouraging. 5K, it's a nice price tag, but like you said, there's been some volatility in the production, but this is a good game if you want to kind of do a full game stack type scenario and pray for overtime, which unlikely, but if it hits, I mean, where the production is going to come from, where the playing time is going to come from. So just a lot of intrigue in this game.
Yeah, I love the matchup for Porter. He has a good matchup as far as paper goes, and like you mentioned, minutes are there. Yeah. Do like that game for sure. That's why we spent so much time on it. Charlotte at Detroit. We don't have a Vegas line for this game yet, but it's a pretty interesting game here. Charlotte. Charlotte's a team that they're in the 6th seed. They're looking good to make the playoffs. Detroit's in the 8th seed, and they need to win every game, like we were just mentioning with Washington. They're in that little. So this game has a lot of meaning behind it. Meaningful games this time of the year. You can almost predict what's going to happen as far as minutes. So let's start it off with Charlotte. Who do you like here for Charlotte tonight?
For the game as a whole, is not the most appealing, but when you look at the scenarios here, there should be some appeal because, like you said, Charlotte, a team that really wants to make the playoffs, they're currently in the 6th seed. We have Detroit, who, a nice young core of guys. They want to get in the playoffs as well. They're right there in the hunt. I'd guess this would end up probably close to a pick'em. I mean, the Pistons at home here, Charlotte probably a slightly better team. They'll get the home bump, so it should be close to a pick'em. On the Charlotte side of things, Marvin Williams, I believe, is expected to play. Okay, he said he will play on Friday. So that takes away some value, and that crowds that front court quite a bit. You look, Al Jefferson's getting back in the mix. Kaminsky had the nice game last time, but that was with Marvin Williams out. They have Cody Zeller as well. So to me, I'm writing off the front court. Not much appeal there. Start looking around a little bit. Nick Batum, 7.7K. It's just, I don't know. It's a little bit too much for me. Not much appeal there. If I'm getting any exposure to the Hornets, it's going to be through Kemba Walker in tournaments. The production has been just very, very inconsistent lately, like really bad. Coming off 2 really poor games, one against the Spurs, kind of give them the free pass there. Tough defense. The other against the Nets. Well, you should have done a little better than 25 fantasy points because they have one of the worst defenses against point guards. So I'm not finding a lot I like here. If I'm doing anything, like I said, it would be Kemba Walker, and that's tournament only.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Lin? 4,300. His minutes are definitely trending in the right direction. I like him for tournaments, and I don't mind Courtney Lee for tournaments as well. Some of this, getting cheap exposure at shooting guard with 5, 6, 7x upside, on a 9-game slate is definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I'd definitely consider Lynn in tournaments. I think most of these guys are tournament plays whereas I could see myself maybe investing in some of these Pistons guys more so in cash
Yeah.
games. The upside, not really there. I mean, there's some of the guys have upside, but more so you're looking at guys that are going to play 35, 36 minutes and grind out value. Those guys would be like Marcus Morris. He'll play a lot of minutes. Tobias Harris. I think Andre Drummond's one guy that could be considered in kind of all formats, and Reggie Jackson, I think, decent cash game play. The price is down 6.2K. So if we get 30 fantasy points in cash games, that's good enough.
Yeah, I definitely like Drummond tonight.
Yeah.
His minutes are trending in the right direction. In games that you have to win, you expect him to be on the court for 33 plus minutes. 33 plus minutes at 8K, he can easily go for 50 fantasy points. I love his upside in this matchup against Charlotte. Outside of Drummond, Reggie Jackson, not a tournament option. Like you said, questionable cash game play. Tobias Harris, the problem with Tobias Harris, he was great when he was a small forward. Now that he's a power forward, you're not really getting the tournament upside that you want. You're getting the consistency. Which, something that, if you're playing 50-50s double up, something you definitely consider. But Marcus Morris, 5,500, the small forward position, I don't mind him. He's playing a ton of minutes down the stretch right now. So over 37 minutes in 4 of his last 5 games. I love that at 5,500.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think Harris is a guy that's been, since coming to Detroit, really hasn't done terribly, but he's more so grinding out value, getting close to value, not really doing those big 40-point performances. Safe bet, I'd say, to get between 25 and 30 fantasy points, and that's good for cash at 6K. Marcus Morris, going to play a lot of minutes. The production has been somewhat inconsistent throughout the season, but 5.5K, we're looking for 26, 27 fantasy points. Very doable if he's going to get 36, 37 minutes. So Drummond, I think, has the most upside, like you said, and I think, these other guys are playable. The one thing to note here, KCP is expected to play, didn't play last game. His price...
5,700 against Nicholas Batum. You can do better on a 9-game slate.
Yeah. That sums up perfectly, my friend.
Yeah, well, KCP Whisper. I would say if he's in play.
Oh yeah, you got it. You know. I can't even comment. That's your dude.
Milwaukee at Atlanta. Another game that has some meaning behind it as far as playoffs go. Milwaukee, they're pretty much out of it at this point, but Atlanta's in the 3 seed. They're not locked into the playoffs because really between the 3 and 8 seed, there's only 4 games. And so Atlanta comes in, they've won 8 of their last 10 games. So they're playing good basketball right now in this matchup against Milwaukee. Talk to me about the visiting Milwaukee Bucks here.
So with the Bucks, we've seen a tightened rotation, kind of. The one guy to mention right off the bat is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm going to piggyback off of what our buddy Jeff Collins continues to say about this guy. He's priced up, so people look and say, do I want to pay for him? Would I rather do LeBron James, Kevin Durant at the same price point? People are saying, no, I'm going to play those more known guys. With Antetokounmpo, he's really into this whole thing. He's really dedicated. He wants these triple doubles. He wants assists. He's really trying to improve. Jason Kidd's giving him, all the opportunity in the world. The minutes are there regardless of the game script. So that's just super, super important at this point in the season. We saw him have some monster 70 fantasy point performances. We've seen him have some 50 fantasy point performances back-to-back games here. We're looking for, he's been over 40 fantasy points in looks like 5 out of 7 games. I think he's a good tournament option, and he's kind of the only Milwaukee guy that I'm really looking to get some exposure to. Chris Middleton kind of fallen off as of late. We saw some real nice consistency in him, but he's at 7.3K and, hasn't paid off that price tag in, 5 games. It's been 5 games since he's actually surpassed, the value threshold on the 7.3K price tag. So for me, it's Antetokounmpo, and that is in tournaments. Outside of that, I don't have much interest.
Yeah, Middleton's a guy that I talked about on the Wednesday podcast in that game against Cleveland, getting a matchup with J.R. Smith. went out and had 24 fantasy points in the first half and just disappeared in the second half. So for all the reasons that you just said, my friend, the only guy that I want in the tournament is ABC. And if you're looking at it, he's the highest priced small forward. Kawhi's out. So it's $2,000 between him and Batum. He's going to be under-owned. So if you feel like he has the upside, which what you just said, 5 of the last 6 games, at least 40 fantasy points, he has the upside. So, the guy that I like. Now, looking at the Atlanta side of things, it's tough to predict this type of game, but there's one guy in a tournament that is always under-owned, and he has a really good matchup in this game with Greg Monroe, and that's Al Horford, 7,100. Absolutely. I think he has the 40-plus upside. He's a Florida Gator, so I have to talk about him.
I love Horford.
Yeah, this is a great matchup. Anytime you get a center against Monroe, it's a good spot.
He's been, we like predicting things, for NBA DFS, supposed to be the most predictable DFS sport. And he's been a guy that's actually been relatively easy to predict in the sense that if it's a close game, he's going to get the minutes and be productive. And that's been the case as of late. I mean, he's had some very nice 40-plus fantasy point performances. We saw, we'll say 3 out of 5. He had a 38 in there. So 3 out of his last 5 games, 38 or more fantasy points. He's at 7.1K. That's about 35 fantasy points to hit value. He has 50 fantasy point upside, and it's just a great matchup against Milwaukee. And the Hawks have turned into a team that are relatively hard to predict. The point guard, shooting guard, small forward. Is it going to be Teague? Is it going to be Schroeder? Is it going to be Korver getting hot? Is it going to be Bazemore? Is it going to be Cephalosha playing minutes off the bench? Just super hard to predict, at the 1 through 3 position. Millsap, a guy early on in the season, super consistent, showing a lot of upside, kind of falling off. I don't know if he's, slowing down, just getting tired. I don't know what it is. But for me, it's Horford. I think cash game playable and, has upside in tournaments as well.
Yeah, I saw a stat on Millsap. He's playing, I think, like 2.4 minutes less than what he was playing in the first month and a half of the season. So I don't know if they felt like it was time to kind of cruise with him a little bit, have him fresh. But 7,700, he's easily a guy that could get you 35 to 40 fantasy points. But at a power forward position in tournaments, you want that 6x upside, 7x upside. And at his price tag, it's not really there. I like Horford. I'm with you, man. I don't like any of these guards. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen. The other night, Schroeder had, 20 minutes and put up 38 fantasy points. You can't expect that. You can't predict that. No. Let the 5% people play him and get their 12 fantasy points tonight. I'm going to pass on that. Toronto at Houston. This game actually has some fantasy meaning as well because Houston's a team. They're 1 game behind the Jazz right now, and the Jazz are losing to Oklahoma City by 11 at halftime as we're recording this podcast. So Houston's in a position where they need to win games, and not the same thing goes for Toronto. They're pretty much locked into the 2 spot in the East. Doesn't look like they're going to catch the Cavs. So pay attention to the news. I don't know if I trust Lowry or DeRozan at this point. I don't trust the coaching. What are your thoughts on Toronto?
Well, the thing with Toronto is they just don't have much to play for at this point in the season. I don't think they're going to catch the Cavs. They're pretty locked into that number 2 seed, the 3 teams further behind. So, they just don't have much to play for. And we saw it the other night. They have not been forthcoming with information, right after lock. Lowry, hey, guess what? This guy's going to suit up, but, he's going to have 0 minutes next to his name. So if you rostered him, you got screwed. Yeah, it's just a situation that is best to avoid at this point in the season. Maybe that makes some good tournament plays because they'll be low owned. That's your field of expertise, not mine. But for me, definitely on the cash game side, no thank you. They're getting healthier as well, which, is always a bad thing for DFS. Good thing for the teams, bad things for DFS because it takes away some value. We saw Biyombo have some good games there. Valanciunas has returned. So it's just, I'm full avoid, even though the matchup's great. The matchup is actually really, really good against Houston, but you have to, like I talked about earlier, you have to take some of these other factors into consideration. And the fact that they don't have anything to play for at this point in the season, they're basically locked into their seed in the playoffs. It's a risky situation.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Even there's contrarian and there's just not being smart at this time of the year, and targeting Toronto players in a 9-game slate with 18 teams in play. It's hard to do and it's hard to justify. If you're playing on a site like DraftKings or something, it's a lot easier to maybe play some of these guys.
Yeah.
One guy, if I'm going to take a shot on a tournament, I'm playing, multi-entries, not if I'm playing just one team. It's DeRozan. Like you said, the matchup against Harden, always something that we want to target. But 705 could roll around and it could be like, hey, DeRozan's unlikely to play tonight. So you really got to be careful with that. One guy that's kind of been benefiting from, DeRozan and Lowry, kind of sitting out was Corey Joseph. He's played 25-plus minutes in, I think, the last 7 or 8 games that he's started or played in. So it's a good matchup. He hasn't been doing a lot fantasy-wise, but it's a good matchup at 3,600 if you want to punt point guard on a 9-game slate. That's up to you, but I don't mind the matchup. Now, looking at Houston's side of things, like we just got done mentioning, they're in must-win games. This is a tough game against Toronto, but they are at home. We don't have a line for this game yet, but you'd have to think that Toronto's probably favored.
Yes, it would be slightly. It's got to be damn close.
Harden, man, he said that his foot hurt and then went out and put up 59 and then put up 60 the next night. I think his foot's okay.
Yeah, give me Harden and some more Harden and a little more Harden on top of that Harden, because he playing that you get just the minutes and a guy that is capable of doing so much on the court. 44, 38, 37, 40, 42. Coming off a 60 burger against a team that no one wants to take fantasy players against the Utah Jazz. So he went off in this matchup not too long ago. He had 68 fantasy points against the same Toronto Raptors team. So there's some good players on the slate. We have Curry, we have Cousins if he plays. So there's some big names, but I'm tempted to say that Harden's the guy that I might want more than anybody else because of the scenario and the situation that the team's in. Must win. They want to get in the playoffs. They're not one of these teams that are hoping to avoid that 8 seed and get into the lottery. They want to win. So Harden, 40 plus minutes in a close game. Yes, please. Thank you. Anything you want to say there?
Don't think twice about it. All right, so we'll talk about the Sacramento game here in a minute, but if Cousins plays, it's really close with his upside and Harden's upside in their matchups. But if Cousins is out, Curry always has 70-point upside. Yes. Don't get me wrong. He has a lot of supporting cast members. Now, Harden, on the other hand, it's the James Harden show in Houston. This is a really tough matchup for Dwight Howard. James Harden, like you said, 40-plus minutes in a close game. Don't think twice about it. Honestly, Beasley's minutes are trending in the wrong direction. I'm off of him for this game tonight, and I don't really want anything else with Houston tonight.
It's Harden. Honestly, it's pretty simple. It's James Harden. He's essentially putting the team on his shoulders, if you want to say. I know it's a cliche statement. That's really what he's doing at this point in the season. He knows they need to win, and he's a matchup-proof, somewhat unstoppable player. So I'm taking him over Stephen Curry tonight, due to the fact that Warriors are essentially locked into their spot. I don't think the Spurs are going to catch them. They're resting. The Spurs are resting 4 players tonight, which we'll get to when we talk about that. When we talk about that game, so they've talked about rest with Curry. If the game gets slightly out of hand, they're going to limit his minutes. So it's James Harden tonight.
All right, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this next game. Orlando at Miami. Miami's favored by 7. The Magic are out. The Heat need to continue to win. They're kind of in that. They're in like the 5 seed, couple games up over, couple games behind 3rd seed. I don't think Miami cares who they play in the East. So I think they're just going to continue to do just enough to win basketball games. That's kind of been their thing. You want to pay attention to Luol Deng news. If he's out, it could bump up some guys, but I don't see a lot of bumps. Dwayne Wade, 7,200. I don't see the upside there. If I had to gun to my head play one of these guys, it'd be Whiteside. I just worry about minutes with him. But even in 30 minutes against the Magic, he could easily get 40 fantasy points.
Yeah, we have two evils here. Obviously, we have, like you said, you laid out the situation for the Miami Heat perfectly. It's like they're super content with where they are. They're not going to push anything. They're not going to play Dwayne Wade 40 minutes a game so they could bump up a seed. They're just not going to do it at this point. Heat are a slow-paced team, and there's just not a lot of DFS appeal as it is. One thing I'd note is if Deng is out, Josh McRoberts played 30 minutes. Not an impressive 30 minutes, 15 fantasy points, but he's at the minimum. So if you tell me he's going to get 30 minutes again, I'd consider him at obviously the minimum price. So outside of him, not a ton of appeal. I'm basically passing on everyone else. On the other side of the ball, it doesn't get much better because Scott Skiles is the coach. So that is a huge risk in itself. Scott Skiles has been a very inconsistent, unpredictable type coach. We've seen some very nice performances from Aaron Gordon, and then he follows it up with like playing 18 minutes. So just so much unpredictability in Scott Skiles. Another guy, Victor Oladipo, had some massive gains, but the price is up to 8.4K. I'm sorry, I can't pay that sort of price tag for Victor Oladipo. So it's a game that is not very appealing from a DFS standpoint by any means.
Yeah, like I said, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this game. One thing to note, Elfrid Payton's ownership is probably going to be through the roof after putting up 48 fantasy points. He's 5,400. I'm not saying I would fade him 100% if I'm running multiple teams, but I would have very low ownership in this matchup against Miami.
Yeah.
Like you said, Oladipo's priced like Payton's still out, and he's going to get this ton of usage. Yes, the guy's playing a ton of minutes right now. Tough matchup. Dart, man, I don't even want to recommend him as a tournament play, but I think if you're rolling multiple teams, maybe a team. But like I said, you don't have to spend a lot of time on this game. It's two teams in the East. One's kind of cruising, and one has a coach that doesn't have a clue what he wants to do with his players.
That actually is all we should have said right from the beginning.
Memphis at San Antonio.
Oh, this is another.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on this game. San Antonio is resting Leonard. They are resting Danny Green, Patty Mills, and Boris Diaw in this game. If it wasn't Pop and it wasn't almost the end of March and almost April, I would be like, well, LaMarcus Aldridge might get a bump. Parker might get a bump. Duncan might get a bump. But honestly, the only person that I might roster on San Antonio tonight, and it would be a shot in the dark, and it would only be because he's 3,500, is David West. Does he get a bump that Dio's out? That's it.
Yeah, so we briefly talked about it before we hopped on here because it's the biggest piece of news that broke, for tomorrow's slate. Pretty rare to get this type of information like prior to lock of the day before, but especially when you consider from Popovich. But that did happen. The Spurs are locked into the 2 seed essentially. They are 4 or 5 games behind the Warriors, and then they're 11 games ahead of the Thunder. So they're essentially locked in. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game where we don't see anyone playing more than like 28 minutes for the Spurs. I could be completely wrong. Maybe LaMarcus Aldridge has a good game. I mean, he might be the one guy I'd consider a little bit if you're going to pay up for somebody on this team. Yeah. But outside of that, like you said, maybe a David West. I'm guessing Kyle Anderson might draw the start. He's the minimum. Moderate interest there, super low upside, but minimum price. Yeah, maybe, but for the most part, it's a risk. And at this point in the season with Popovich, you just don't know. And like I said, I have the inclination that this is going to be a spot where, he's not going to push anyone. Whatever happens, if they win, great. If they lose, oh well.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident, pretty okay with not taking any Spurs in the slate. I'd be shocked if any of them plays 35-plus minutes. Yeah. There's no upside here. Looking at Memphis, Zach Randolph is news that you want to monitor. He's questionable with a right ankle sprain. They're not going to push him, so I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't play. Mike Conley looks like he is going to if not miss the whole season or the end of the season, there's a good chance that he doesn't come back until the last week. Stevenson's price is at 6,600. Against the Spurs, his minutes are trending downward. Honestly, I can't name one person that I want here. Maybe if I'm going to take a shot, it would be Green if we get Zebo out, but his minutes are trending down too. So honestly, there's not a lot to like.
Yeah, it's a bad spot. I mean, there's not many teams that we want to avoid, taking guys against, but the Spurs happen to be one of them. I mean, even with these guys out, they still play great team defense, and the Grizzlies have a lot of guys out. This could be a super sloppy game. So I'm just it's a good situation to avoid. I mean, even if a couple of these guys are out for the Grizzlies too, I just don't even know if the upside's really there, to be honest with you.
One guy that I'll say is a tournament option is Vince Carter. 3,600. He has seen it a couple times this year where they're down by a lot in the fourth quarter, and Vince Carter is out there doing 2009 Vince Carter things, thinking that he is 25 years old again. Yeah. He would be a tournament option for me at 3,600 punt play, just because if this game turns into a blowout, he could get some run in that. Phoenix at Sacramento. Big news here to pay attention to is the DeMarcus Cousins news. Let's talk about Phoenix first. Yeah. Booker had an excellent game. Knight had an excellent game. Both these guys coming off of good games. And to get a matchup with Sacramento, who we love targeting, guards against, I think both of these guys are in play.
Yeah, so it was obviously just a matter of time before, Brandon Knight had one of these games. Don't mean to say I told you so, but if you listen to Grinders Live, I did indicate that, listen, the dude was shooting 25% since returning from injury and still hitting value. I said, matter of time, he's not going to shoot 25% for the rest of the season. Well, he started knocking down some shots last game and went off for 50 fantasy points, just underpriced right now in his role. And then you throw this great matchup on top of it. Upside is massive here. Price has not fully adjusted. I think he'll probably be one of the most popular plays on the slate, if I'm not wrong here.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I love Knight. You could pair him with a top point guard or, take another guy in his price range. However, roster construction kind of plays out with injury news. But I agree, man. I think he's going to be highly owned, and I think that Booker, 6,500 coming off a big game, he has an excellent matchup as well. Jeff talked about it on the podcast on Wednesday. Booker gets to play some point guard too, so you're getting some time at point guard. You're getting a usage bump for a shooting guard. 6,500 against Sacramento. There's not a line on this game yet, but I'd be shocked if it's under 215. No defense going to be played.
It's going to be about it's probably be I'd probably say over 220, and it's going to be within 5 points. So this is a spot to fire away. And, both those guys, Knight, Booker, we saw John Lure have a massive game. Tyson Chandler's out. We could go ahead and fire him up again. A lot of good options here. A lot of good options.
Yeah, if Chandler's out, I like Lure, and I like PJ Tucker. If Chandler's out as well, Tucker's getting that extra, 6 minutes without Chandler on the court. And Tucker's not a guy that's going to go out and score, 30 points, but, he can easily get 30 fantasy points because he's so active defensively and offensively. And that's weird to say from a guy if you've seen PJ Tucker. But anyway, he is looking at Sacramento. Let's talk about Sacramento if Cousins plays first. I think if Cousins plays, that kind of bumps down Rondo. It bumps down Rudy Gay. Yeah. The only guy that I want outside of Cousins, if Cousins plays and they say he's good to go, he's definitely an option. The other guy that I like here is Collison, man. 5,500. I love his upside.
Yeah, a guy that goes really low owned, but I mean, the minutes have obviously been up as of late. He'd get a massive bump if DeMarcus Cousins is out in this matchup. Just a great matchup. So I like him. 5.5K for cash games, looking for 27 fantasy points. That's very realistic, and he has much more upside. And then obviously he gets a boost as well if Ben McLemore is ruled out. What's his status? He's been out for 9 games, so I'm guessing he sits again. So just something to monitor there, though.
Yeah, pay attention to the news. All right, so if Cousins is out, we talked about it with Jeff on Wednesday because we had the same situation. Rudy Gay gets
Don't ask me.
he gets a usage bump But his fantasy points really average out right around the same, and he's going to be highly owned maybe again.
So I made the case. Oh, he will be, and I made the case with Jeff on the show that it was a sample size thing. That small sample size, the usage rate is too high. The shot's going to start falling. He's going to start playing better. I was wrong. I was way wrong. And if you played tournaments and faded him, you had a big time leg up on the competition. It's going to be highly owned again if Cousins is out. I don't know. It seems pretty 50-50 at this point. If you're a tournament player, maybe he's a good fade again. I don't know. I mean, you're like I said, you're the tournament guy. In cash games, I can tell you one thing: he'll be very highly owned again. I mean, us cash game guys keep going back to the well, and there's no water there.
I faded him the other night. I tweeted out right when we got the news with Cousins. I tweeted out, I said, fade Rudy Gay on all the cat, and it worked out for me.
Yes.
So Wednesday night was a good night for me. But
no gay, all cats.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So if Cousins is out, Rondo's price at 7,800. I know he hit 52 fantasy points the other night. I just don't see him doing it again. I would rather play the fade on a guy like Rondo at that price tag.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen again. He's a guy that actually is in a similar boat to Rudy Gay in the fact that you expect him to be better with Cousins off the court, and it's simply not the case. Obviously, last game he decided that he was going to be a scoring machine and scored a lot of actual points, which is tough to predict with a guy like him. But I'd recommend fading him again if Cousins is out. But obviously he's shown that he does have the upside.
Yeah, honestly, he can show the upside all he wants. I'm still not going to play him.
Yeah.
Dallas at Golden State. Dallas is a spot where they need to keep winning. They're in the 7th seed right now, 1 game up over Utah, 1 game up, or they're half a game up over Utah, half a game up over Houston. Looking at what's going on in the slate tonight, Oklahoma City is pouncing Utah pretty hard in the 3rd quarter. So, Dallas is in a position where they just need to win games. Yeah. So this is a tough game to win. But
unfortunately for them, they happen to be playing against a team that might set the all-time record for the most wins. So them winning seems pretty unlikely at this point.
All right, let's talk Dallas first. We know Parsons is not going to be available for this game. That kind of makes it interesting from a couple things, but we do need to say that Bogut returned to action on Wednesday night, so I'm guessing he'll probably be back in the lineup again. Talking Dallas, man, Dirk Nowitzki, 8K. He's been playing really good basketball lately.
Yeah, I mean he's been playing great. They've been essentially leaning on him, but I mean he continues to be a low-owned guy. I mean people aren't playing him. Does he have the upside in tournaments at 8K? I don't know. I'd argue maybe. I just can't get excited to play a 30 – how old is he? 36, 37-year-old going into Golden State where the likelihood of a blowout is relatively high. I can't get excited paying 8K. I'm a cash guy. Maybe that makes him a good tournament play. I don't know. But I certainly will not be paying that for Dirk Nowitzki.
See, here's the thing about Dirk. At 8K, does he have the upside? Probably not. Can he easily put up 40 in this matchup? Yeah. He gets hot. This is the time of year that this guy always starts playing good basketball. Yeah. He wants to make the playoffs. The one thing that stands out to me with Dirk, and I've noticed over the last couple weeks, I don't think I've played a slate that he's been over 15% owned. So a guy a guy that can put up 50 fantasy points, which probably not likely in this matchup against Golden State, but if he gets hot, knocks down some threes, gets going, you never know what's going to happen.
One thing I'd recommend if you are going to play Dirk, I'd make sure I'd throw some correlation plays in there because you have to figure if Dirk is going to have a big game, or if Dallas is going to keep this game close, Dirk will need to have a big game, which means guys like Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, players like that. So I'd definitely get some correlation in there and work in some Golden State Warriors if you're going to play Dirk in a tournament lineup.
Now, looking at with Parsons out these last couple games, Darren Williams, 39 minutes and 43 minutes, 6,100 against Golden State. This screams cash game, man.
Yeah, I mean, but it's the Golden State Warriors, and it's
I know.
tough. I mean, it's super tough to really. I mean, you look at they play at the fastest pace, but they have a really good defense, and then you throw in the fact that there's going to be a pretty high likelihood for a blowout. But Dallas is desperate. It's actually a pretty unique situation, and for DFS, it's pretty tough to sort out, to be honest with you. But they're going to be leaning on these guys, and they're not going to give up either. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's Thursday night. We haven't dug super deep. There's still a lot more research to be done for both of us, and yeah, maybe Darren Williams is a guy to consider if he's going to be playing that amount of minutes, and you have to figure they're not going to give up easily, even if they're down 20 points in the fourth. They're going to give it an effort because they need to win ball games, and they're one of these teams that they actually do want to make the playoffs. They're not going to be content settling to hit the lottery. So definitely an interesting situation here. But one guy that I think is interesting, potentially more for tournaments, is this Salah Mejri. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but 30 starting now, 33 minutes, 30 minutes, 43 fantasy points, 29 fantasy points. I think it's an interesting tournament option.
Yeah, 4,700. The one thing, like, I'm going to pay attention to how many times he's talked about, as he talked about on Twitter all day. Yeah. Because if he's talked about a lot, and I'm projecting his ownership to be higher than, 25%.
No, it won't.
Yeah, easy fade for me. I want to pay attention. The good thing is he's a center, so we'll see how much he's talked about. I do agree. I think he's in play. Yeah. I'm thinking tournaments. I'm thinking if he's high owned, I'll probably play the fade, but we'll see. I played him on Wednesday night. He paid off for me at 4,000. Wes Matthews. You're going to tell me a guy is going to play 40-plus minutes against Golden State. I'll take a shot. Do we know he's going to play 40 minutes? It could be a blowout. The thing is, Dallas, when do they give up in this game? If they're down by 15 in the fourth quarter, do they roll their starters back out there?
Yeah,
I think they do.
I think they do too, yeah.
So with that being said, all right, so if it's 6 minutes to go and they pull the starters, that means Matthews is at, 33, 35 minutes at 4,100? I think he's in play.
Yeah, the extra possessions playing the Golden State Warriors, like I said, they play at the fastest pace, so that would offset some of that blowout risk. 4K, absolutely. He appears to be, him and Salah appear to be the guys that are getting the biggest bump here, and Darren Williams as well with Chandler Parsons out. So I'd definitely be willing to take a shot on that 4.1K. And then you have to consider the fact that he plays shooting guard. Shooting guard's typically a pretty ugly position, and that might be the case again tonight. So yeah, I definitely think Wes Matthews is in play in all formats, cash games and tournaments.
Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, all these guys over 7K. Curry at 10.6. Curry, like we talked about a little while ago, probably one of the most consistent fantasy players in basketball this year. Yeah. At 10.6, his upside is always there. If this game stays close, it's more like what you were saying. If you're going to play Dirk, you're going to play Darren Williams on the team, then throw a Curry on that team and, hope this game stays close down to the wire. Outside of that, what are your thoughts on Curry?
Super safe cash game play. I mean, really, really safe cash game play. Obviously, he's a known commodity, so that's going to drive up the ownership percentages in tournaments. So I think he's definitely a fine cash game play, massive upside, super consistent. Have no problem with him, and I have no problem with any of the Golden State Warriors. If you want to play Klay Thompson, I mean, it's always a good idea to get exposure to the best offense in basketball if you can. If the value opens up where it's pretty simple to get some of these guys in, yeah, sure, why not?
Roster construction is so important when trying to roster some of these Golden State guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a 226.5 over under right now, and Golden State's favored by 15 at home. So you have to pay attention to that. Like we said, Dallas, when do they give up? They need to win games. Expect them to run guys in the fourth quarter. That doesn't necessarily mean Golden State's going to have their starters out there, but it's something to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Last game on this 9-game Friday slate, my friend, is Denver at the Lakers. I'll make this easy for you. I don't like anybody on the Lakers. One guy that I will take maybe on a couple tournament teams is Randall and Nance. And outside of that, I want nothing to do with this team.
I like Randall. I like him quite a bit. That price tag's really nice at 6.3K. As far as the guards go, I want one of them to be out. I want a Kobe Bryant to be out. I want a Lou Williams. It's just a crowded situation right now. Jordan Clarkson has a nice price at 5.5K, but it only has one good performance in basically his last 6. Love that price tag. If Russell's going to be out, yeah, I'd be in, but Russell's fine. He's playing. So I think for me, it's Julius Randle and slight interest in D'Angelo Russell as well. Kobe Bryant is questionable. So if Kobe Bryant's out, I would have a lot more interest in a couple of these guys, but we need to get that news first.
I doubt we'll get that news on FanDuel being a 10:30 game. So it's a flip a coin when it comes to Kobe, man. Some nights he'll be like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to play," and suits up and he goes out and has his best game. And some nights he's like, "Oh, I'm feeling fine," and he sits out. So it's definitely a coin flip with Kobe. Like you said, Randall probably the only guy. If I'm going to punt power forward, which probably not on a 9-game slate, I would take a shot on Nance, but tournament option only Randall. Let's talk Denver here. If I told you that Jokic was going to play 27 minutes again tonight, would you play him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No questions. No questions asked. Honestly, and that's the problem. It's Mike Malone, one of the most unpredictable coaches in the NBA. You really don't know what this guy's going to do. And Jokic has a ton of talent, and it's just a matter of getting the playing time. He just needs to be on the court. But we've seen him come off really nice, good performance last game, but very capable of playing 18 minutes tonight. So I don't know. I want to like the guy. I want to play him. It's a great matchup. I think he's a phenomenal tournament option every single night, regardless of the matchup. You're going to go against the Utah Jazz. I think he is a great tournament option every single night. If he ever were to play like 34 minutes in a game, I mean, he should be a lock for like 50 fantasy points. But I don't know. You just don't know what Malone's going to do. Guy's super talented. I like him a lot for tournaments.
One guy that I like a lot for tournaments, there's actually 2 guys for Denver that I like for tournaments tonight. One depends on Kenneth Faried news. He's missed the last few games, so I'd be shocked if he comes back tonight and plays full amount of minutes, but it's a 10:30 game, so you're taking a risk on rostering this guy. It's Arthur, getting 27 to 35 minutes since Freed's been out in a matchup with the Lakers, 3,800. I like him more than I would punt with like a Nance or something like that.
Yeah, I like him a lot better. More upside, 3.8K. 30 plus fantasy point upside. That's pretty darn rare at 3.8K. Definitely more upside than a guy like Nance. Another guy I think is a good tournament play. I like a lot of these nuggets for tournaments is Moutier. Same reasoning. The playing time. 27 minutes, 23, 34, 26, 42. Coming off a game, 47 fantasy points might drive the ownership percentages up a little bit, but I still like him a lot in tournaments at 6K. I think there's a lot of profit potential there.
Yeah, one of the only safe options as far as minutes goes is Gary Harris, 5,300. The problem with Gary Harris is he doesn't do a lot besides score, so you have to accept that. But the one good thing is it's the Lakers. So in a matchup with the Lakers at 5,300 playing, he's going to play 30-plus minutes. That's a spot. But DJ Augustine is a guy that I've been using in tournaments a lot. He's burned me. He's helped me. He's burned me. He's helped me. He can play 23 minutes. He can play 29.
Yeah.
He is the guy off the bench for this team. So, he's the guy that's going to get the usage off the bench in a matchup with the Lakers. I have to like him at 4,600.
Yeah, definitely a tournament option. Don't play him in cash. I can tell you that, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to lay out the ground rules here for cash game plays.
Well, I think we laid it out pretty good, my friend. I think we brought the goodness here in this hour-long podcast, and really going to help you guys get started for this nice Friday slate, man. This is a good slate here. A lot of playoff meaningful games, a lot of games to look at, a lot of injuries to pay attention to, a lot of edge here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's it's a tough spot in the NBA season. End of the year, a lot of risk, a lot of chance of late scratches. Like we talked about early on. But there's still some money to be made before we can start playing ourselves some MLB DFS.
Oh, it's so close. But Make sure you guys go over to our sponsor, FanDuel.com. They have a couple $100,000 tournaments. Just a regular Friday night. $200,000 slam, $200,000 shot if you don't want to pay $25, and if you want to be a baller, $150,000 monster. It's just a Friday night.
Just another Friday night, man.
Yeah, no problem. We got couple million in prize pool. No problem.
No biggie.
Hoop, it's always a pleasure to work with you, my friend. It's always a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can match up during baseball season here.
Oh, we will make that happen. Don't you worry. Hoop, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, just good luck to everyone tonight. Nice slate. It's going to be one of the last slates here until we get some baseball action. So take advantage of it, and super appealing. So, good luck to everyone out there. Make some money.
Good luck, everybody. And if you don't already know, Hoop is the man when it comes to baseball as well. So make sure you guys give him a follow for baseball. He is legit. Guys, I'm Stevie TPFL. Dan will be back on Monday. Thanks for listening this week, and good luck tonight.